Hello, I'm Esther Giduyuwat. Welcome to Africa 54. War continues to rage in Gaza on Thursday as a proposed pause in the fighting and swap of hostages being held by Hamas for prisoners being held by the Israelis is being delayed until at least Friday. Meanwhile, columns of smoke from blasts rose across northern Gaza as the Israeli military says it launched 300 airstrikes in the past day. Israel also sounded sirens warning of cross-border rocket launches by Palestinian armed groups. The Hamas-run Palestinian media reported Israeli strikes in the northern areas as well as in the southern city of Khan Yunis, where Israel has told residents of the north to seek shelter. More now on the Israel and Hamas deal to release 50 Israeli hostages, all women and children, in exchange for a 4-day pause in the fighting and freedom for some 150 Palestinian prisoners. Israel is reiterating that after the ceasefire, the fighting in Gaza will resume. Linda Gradstein has more from Jerusalem.
After weeks of efforts by Qatar, Egypt, and the U.S., Israel and Hamas agreed to a 4-day ceasefire in exchange for the release of 50 Israeli hostages, all women and children. Israel also agreed to free 150 Palestinian prisoners, all women and minors. Hamas will hand over 50 hostages in stages to the Red Cross, who will transfer them to Israeli soldiers. Israel says they will be brought to isolated medical facilities inside Israel to reunite with their families and have medical checks. Each day, another 12 or 13 hostages will be freed. Israeli press reports say this deal will initially include 30 children, 8 mothers, and 12 other women. Israel claims that Hamas is holding some 40 children, but Hamas says it cannot yet locate some 10 additional children kidnapped on October 7th. The Israeli cabinet approved the deal in a late-night session Tuesday.
We
are facing a difficult decision this evening, but it's a right decision. The entire security establishment fully supports it.
Israel has published a list of 300 Palestinian prisoners, either women or under age 19, half of whom will be released in exchange for the 50 Israeli hostages. Others could be freed if the ceasefire is extended. One of those on the list is 18-year-old Ubay Abu Maria, whose father Yusuf was himself jailed by Israel 5 times.
Ubay was first arrested at 14, and he's now injured, losing control of 70% of his arm. I am very happy that soon Ubay will be in my arms.
The war began after fighters from U.S.-designated terrorist group Hamas crossed into Israel October 7th and killed some 1,200 people, abducting another 240, mostly civilians. Israel responded with massive airstrikes and a ground invasion that has killed at least 14,000 people in Gaza, more than 2/3 of them women and children, according to Hamas. During the 4-day ceasefire, Israel will allow large quantities of humanitarian aid, including fuel, into Gaza. But Israeli officials say that after the ceasefire ends, Israel will resume its offensive against Hamas.
Unlike many Israelis, I believe that it is very clear to the decision makers that they cannot stop. The Israeli sentiment will not let them stop. If they stop the war after the 4, 5, 6 days of the ceasefire, that will be the end of this government.
For the families of the hostages in Israel, it is a time of unbearable tension as they wait to see if their loved ones will be freed. Linda Gradstein, VOA News, Jerusalem.
Tens of thousands of Israelis who had been living abroad returned to Israel to join reserve army units and assist the war effort. Among them are hundreds of lone soldiers, Jews from around the world who had previously volunteered, trained and served with the Israeli army but have no family in the country. Again, here is Linda Gradstein.
Thousands of Israelis living abroad returned to join the 360,000 reservist soldiers called up to fight in the war against Hamas. Former Israeli paratrooper Josh Ulansi was beginning his last year of law school in California, but he volunteered to come back when the war broke out.
So the biggest reason I came back was to be with my friends and my team. I kind of struggled to imagine continuing my semester in school, knowing that my friends and my family were out in the field, protecting the country that we all love. And I just knew that I wouldn't be able to focus on my studies, much less feel like I was doing everything I could.
Ulansi is a lone soldier, one of thousands of Jews from abroad who volunteer for the army with no immediate family in Israel to support them. At least 4 lone soldiers have been killed in the fighting in Gaza, yet Ulansi says that he feels safer in Israel than on his and many other American university campuses, where there has been a sharp increase in anti-Semitism. Other Israelis living abroad have left their jobs and families to come join their reserve units. Eli, who asked that his last name not be revealed for security reasons, left his wife and 4 young children in England as soon as the war started, returning only for a weekend to celebrate his son's bar mitzvah.
And just this sense of mission, of together, that goes beyond any limits and any dividers that used to be between people in Israeli society, was just tremendously positive and uplifting.
Many other Israelis have returned to join the thousands of volunteers serving in civilian aid groups. Having lived and worked in New York for the past 9 years, physiotherapist Tali Spiesman is volunteering at an Israeli hospital to treat survivors of the October 7th Hamas attack.
There's so many of them. There's a grandma that laid on her grandchildren to try and save them. And have injuries of like shreds of a grenade that have injured all over her legs. There's a lot of horrible injuries in both civilians and in soldiers.
Those who have come back to Israel to join the war effort say they have no idea how long they'll stay, but they have no intention of leaving until the war ends. Linda Gradstein, VOA News, Jerusalem.
Now to Africa, where 50 young innovators and leaders from 19 African countries attended a 3-week leadership and professional development training program in Accra, Ghana. Sponsored by the U.S. government, the Young African Leaders Initiative, or YALI program, challenges them to find technology-focused social and business solutions to climate challenges. Isaac Kaleji reports from Accra.
And this one works for the soil. So this
26-year-old Bati Tabinyang Alain from Cameroon is one of the 50 young Africans showcasing their climate change-inspired innovations at this year's Young African Leaders Initiative program. Alain has developed a tool that helps farmers determine the viability of their soil for crop production.
So they will be able to know what to plant, when to plant, what fertilizers to use, when to use it, and even on the pests. And moreover, it helps to give farmers informed decisions on disaster management.
Innovators like Motia Inja Injobaya Felicia, also from Cameroon, are promoting the use of organic seeds and fertilizers among African farmers to withstand the impact of climate change.
That is when it comes to my knowledge that no, we have common things around us like the fowl droppings, we have the sunflower that we can use to produce organic liquid fertilizer, which will now help to increase our output, and it is climate friendly as well.
Maxwell Kojo Honu from Ghana says he has a solution to help slow deforestation that involves moving away from burning wood and instead produces clean cooking fuel from cassava peels and sawdust.
By doing this, we are reducing indoor pollution that our mothers experience. We're also reducing the amount of trees that get cut. Then we're also turning this into an opportunity for young people to be employed and learn skills.
The yearly Climate Tech Innovators and Leaders program was announced during Vice President Kamala Harris's historic visit to Ghana in March this year. Participant Andel Imguni of South Africa says the 3-week leadership and professional development training program held from October 11 to 27 gave her new ideas.
So for me, acknowledging that I'm a social entrepreneur, I'm at the heart of the problems, but I'm not a tech person. So this program is I'm hoping to propel myself into that space and incorporate tech to solve these climate and social challenges simultaneously.
Since 2015, the Yali Regional Leadership Centers in Africa have trained more than 7,800 young leaders. Julesa O13 is the Mission Director of West Africa at the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID. She says organizers have high expectations from this year's participants.
I want them to maintain the networks that they've built here, but more than that, I want them to talk to other young people, other motivated young people, and help them and transfer the skills that they've learned here and the knowledge that they've learned here to other young people around the continent.
The fellows say they already know their work is cut out for them, as the impact of climate change is being felt, often with severe consequences around the world. Isaac Kalaji, VOA News, Accra, Ghana.
We often bring you stories of Africans in the U.S. who are making a positive contribution to society. Today, we have Julie Weche, President, Elimu Community Center in Baltimore, Maryland. Weche has over 33 years teaching experience in all grade levels from Botswana, Kenya, and here in the United States. She joins me live from Baltimore. Julie, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you so much.
Tell us what prompted you to open Elimu Community Center.
With my vast experience teaching, I have always had a desire to serve children beyond the school. So I started an after-school program that serves the children's academic excellence to develop them in their math, reading, and science, but as well as that, to develop them as a whole child.
And so when you talk about developing them as a whole child, tell us more about what exactly is involved in what you call wellness, holistic wellness education.
A whole child is not just their intellect, not just their academic. A child needs to be physically excellent. They need their social development. They need their cultural development. They need to be mentored. They need to develop their character. They need mentors. So the program captures everything about a child so that the child is not just academic.
So from what I heard from you earlier, as we had a short conversation, is that you started the school basically because you faced a personal family tragedy. And there's so many people outside, who come from different parts of the country to the United States, and they want to contribute positively to this country, but face similar challenges. How do you rise up and say, I can still do this? This is not too big. I can still do it.
Yes, about 16 years ago, I lost my husband and I was a young mom. I had 2 young children, and that was a big challenge. But I went into myself and decided that I should be able to make it. While I was working as a school teacher in Baltimore City, I decided that I need a purpose. And because I have always loved teaching children and developing excellence in children, I decided that I would rise above that adversity. And that's how I started this center.
Talk to us a little more about the children and what's different from the regular schooling and with what you do now in Baltimore. And how many children do you have, and what's the feedback you're getting from the education officials there and parents?
Yes, so I run a after-school program in Baltimore, Maryland, and the children are transported from their schools to the center. We serve about 80 children, or even more than 80 children, and the feedback from the community and the parents is excellent. We serve children's needs in terms of even transportation from school. Parents are not able to transport their children to an after-school center, so we transported them to the center. We made sure that the children had their homework finished. The children who needed tutoring were given that tutoring so that their grades developed. And Then we had other programs that were physical programs. We had swimming and skating, and even during the summer, we had that.
Julie, we are running out of time, so thank you very much for what you do. Julie Weche is president of the Elimu Community Center in Baltimore, Maryland. Still to come, Kenya is struggling to repay a massive debt owed to China. We'll explain after this break.
Away from the vibrant capital, Nairobi, the northern region of Kenya is dealing with severe drought. This week, we are bringing you a special edition of Our Voices, part of Voice of America's recently released documentary, Hunger Voices. We're highlighting the effect of climate change on women and girls. We'll hear from a woman promoting a solution and encouraging everyone to take action. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
From around the world, let's go.
In other news, Kenyan President William Ruto said Thursday that his country is ready to privatize 35 state companies because they are, quote, trapped in government bureaucracy. Ruto is making this move in a bid to boost productivity after his government last month revised privatization bill into law that makes it easier to sell state enterprises to private companies. The United Nations holding the ramp-up of malaria vaccinations across Africa after the first shipment of doses arrived in Cameroon. Since 2019, more than 2 million children have been given the shot in Ghana, Kenya, and Malawi in a pilot phase, resulting in substantial reductions in severe malaria illness and hospitalizations. And the Democratic Republic of Congo's army is vowing to arrest and punish any soldiers in contact with the FDLR militia, regardless of rank. The FDLR is a descendant of the Rwandan Hutu extremist group that fled into the DRC after carrying out the 1994 Tutsi genocide in Rwanda. Kenya is struggling to repay a massive debt owed to China for the construction of the standard gauge railroad that links Mombasa and Nairobi. But President William Ruto is asking for an additional billion-dollar loan from China to complete some other stalled development projects in the country. Kennedy Wandera reports from Nairobi.
We must admit, honorable members, that as a country, we had been living large and way beyond our means.
President William Ruto, who has been a vocal critic of former President Uhuru Kenyatta's policy of borrowing money from China, appears to have changed his position as he looks for money to finance Kenya's development projects. Earlier this month, Ruto's government announced it will ask the Chinese government to give it more time to pay off existing loans and for an additional $1 billion loan. The new loan will help Kenya complete toll road construction projects, pay contractors who abandoned work of unpaid bills, and invest in ongoing infrastructure projects such as extending the country's standard gauge railway northwest to Malaba at the border with Uganda. It is a big flip-flop from 2 months ago when Ruto told the country he planned to stop borrowing money.
Tulikuwa pahali hatari sana.
We were in a very bad position. We had a lot of debt and we didn't have a plan on how to solve that problem. I would like to tell you that we have stabilized the economy of the Republic of Kenya. We have made sure that we won't be borrowing loans anymore.
Stabilized the economy of the Republic of Kenya.
China is Kenya's second largest lender after the World Bank. During Kenyatta's presidency, Kenya took out $8 billion in Chinese-backed loans to finance the initial construction of the 480-kilometer standard gauge railway from the port city of Mombasa to the nation's capital, Nairobi, and the construction of a major Kenya highway. During Kenyatta's tenure in power, his administration also spent about $8 billion to repair and build 10,000 new kilometers of highway across the country. to pay back what the country owes and the new loans he is asking for. Ruto's government announced plans to expand employment and raise taxes as two of the ways to pay back the loans. But economic experts like Charles Carissa are worried that it's not going to work and believe it is financially dangerous.
As a developed nation, it's a bad situation we're in right now, because if you borrow more, then it means we have less to take care of our needs. One of the things that I will argue this government to do is to relook at the issue of taxation, because theories have proven in the past that if you tax more Kenyans or you tax, you bring more taxes, the revenue does not, gradually go up. Why? Because people tend to sort of evade pay taxes, and therefore we need to balance the two.
Government data show that Kenya is spending about half of its revenue to pay back debts on its books to the International Development Association, the African Development Bank, the International Monetary Fund, China, and Japan. Kennedy Wandera, VOA, Nairobi, Kenya.
Returning to our top story on the Israel-Hamas hostage agreement, Israeli government spokesman Elon Levy spoke to VOA's Carol Van Dam in detail about the hostages and the 4-day pause in the fighting. Levy also spoke about African hostages and whether Israel has had any contact with African governments.
There is no ceasefire. The war continues. What we have now is a temporary cessation, a temporary 4-day pause in order to facilitate an evacuation of 50 hostages. The arrangement we have now is to get 50 hostages, women and children. And we're going to try to get those 50 women and children out. And then we're offering Hamas a choice. For every 10 additional hostages it releases, we will give another 1-day pause in the fighting. But after that is done, we will continue with all force to continue to put pressure on Hamas to release all of our 240 hostages. There will be no one left behind. And we will continue. This war will end with the end of Hamas.
And on the hostages, how many of those hostages are African? Do you know?
Not off the top of my head, but I can find the numbers for you. The October 7th massacre was a crime against humanity, not only against the Israeli people, but there are nationals of 26 countries who are being held hostage in the Gaza Strip right now. Nationals of over 42 countries who were either murdered, abducted, or injured on that terrible day. And we're doing everything we can to bring everyone home. Everyone. No one will be left behind.
Have African governments contacted your government asking them about securing their safety?
Of course, we've been in contact with all our international partners and want to make sure that we get everyone out. Just recently, I believe, we reported the death of a poor Tanzanian exchange student who had been in Israel and abducted on that day, together with nationals of so many other countries, simply ripped out of their beds on that awful morning of October 7th and abducted into the Gaza Strip in the most brutal way. And of course, there's no excuse for this.
What's your government's reaction to South Africa shutting down its embassy in Israel and accusing your government of war crimes and genocide?
Look, a genocide took place on October 7th. It was an act of genocide perpetrated by Hamas. Now, look, we know that we are fighting the most moral fight imaginable. We are fighting to destroy the monsters who perpetrated the most deadly massacre of Jews since the Holocaust and are promising to do that again. And this is a moral test for humanity. Are you with humanity or are you with savagery? We know that we're on the right side of history, and anyone who doesn't stand with us is standing with the people who on October 7th burned, beheaded, abducted babies. And if you want to take the sides of those evil terrorists, history is going to judge you, and history will judge you harshly.
A lot of people would say what's happening in Gaza right now is savage.
We are targeting Hamas. This isn't a war with the Palestinian people. It's not a war with the people of Gaza. It's a war with Hamas. And that's why we've been doing everything we can to get civilians out of harm's way. We could have gone in all guns a-blazing on October 8th. Instead, we gave a month for civilians to get out of harm's way because we don't want them to be hurt.
Now, the Tanzanian government has confirmed the death of Clemens Felix Mtenga, an agricultural intern who was believed to have been kidnapped in Israel during the terrorist attack carried out by Hamas. Mtenga, 22, was working in Israel during the October 7th attacks, one of 260 Tanzanians studying agriculture as part of an agreement between the Israeli and Tanzanian governments. And we've just learned that Mtenga's body is scheduled to be returned to Tanzania on Friday. Now, across the United States, people are celebrating Thursday's Thanksgiving holiday. Many organizations and businesses are going an extra mile to feed the homeless. Joining me live from Washington, D.C.'s Karma DC's Feed the Homeless venue is Jackson Vunganyi. Jackson, tell us what's happening today at Karma.
Hey Esther, it's a little cold out here today. Happy Thanksgiving to you and happy Thanksgiving to all our viewers. Thanksgiving is often a time for families and friends to come together. Many people travel long distance to be with their loved ones during this holiday, and others use the day to volunteer and to give back to the community in terms of their time and resources to help out those that are less fortunate or unable to be with their families. And this is what this Feed the Homeless event is here at the Karma DC, which is a cultural event space in Washington, D.C. area. It's bringing together the local D.C. community to show their support for their less fortunate neighbors, serving them food, drinks, and, just coming together to talk and, be together as a family and as a community.
Jackson, what are the organizers of the event saying about it?
So the organizers of the event are saying that they're doing this again for the community in the spirit of Thanksgiving. I'm here with Adelis, one of the organizers. Adelis, thank you so much for joining us. It's a beautiful event you guys are putting on today. What is on the menu?
Well, we have turkey, we have rice, vegetables, desserts, ice cream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who are you serving? Who are you looking to serve?
But the local community around here. We operate in the northeast area, and then we have a homeless shelter just across our venue. So we want to spend some time with them before going home.
Before going home. Thank you so much, Adelis. Esther, as you can see again, so much on the menu, lots of food. I see mashed potatoes, turkey, rice, gravy, salad, and many other delicacies. So people are lining up and they'll be enjoying the food in a few minutes. Back to you in the studio.
Jackson, before you go, I imagine you've spoken to some of the homeless people. What are they telling you, very briefly?
Well, they're looking forward to the meal. They weren't saying much, but they're looking forward to the delicious meal that will be served in a few moments.
I know you're going to get some of that. Thank you so much, Jackson, for your reporting. Jackson Vunganyi, live for us from Washington, D.C. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.